We have a good number in, so we can start the presentation.
Perfect. Thank you, Mariana, and good morning and good afternoon, everyone. And welcome to this product presentation of 4C Strategies Continuity Manager. So for the next hour, we will be walking through our business continuity management solutions. Or that was a little fast. There we go. We'll give you a quick introduction to 4C Strategies, the company behind this product, our approach to business continuity management, as well as, of course, the main number of this session, the product demonstration, where Alfredo here will walk us through our business continuity management solution and its capabilities. We will have a session for Q&A at the end, but we also welcome, it's always easier to have Q&A questions answered as we walk through this different aspects of the product. So please don't hesitate to write your questions in the Q&A section here, and we'll pause and we will address them as we go along. Now, 4C Strategies as a company, we've been around for 25 years now. We were originally founded in Sweden and support organizations in building operational and organizational resilience through business continuity management, through incident and crisis management, through risk management, and through training and exercise management. So we cater to customers from our offices in the Nordics, in the UK, as well as here in the US, where Alfredo and myself are based, and in Australia. We do this through the software that you will be looking at today, but also through expert services that support organizations in building out frameworks, testing their plans, as well as making sure that incidents are managed in a structured way. This has given us insight into multiple regulatory frameworks, including operational resilience in the UK and ISO 22301 for business continuity. So wherever you are in the world, our experts as well as our software can support you in meeting regulatory requirements as well as business needs. Here are we then. My name is Mikael Grape. I am responsible for our product, resilience product, based out of Washington, D.C. And together with me on the call here today, we have Alfredo Brown, who is our solutions consultant, who will be walking you through the product presentation. But before we get to that, I'll give you just a short introduction to what our software is. First of all, we will be focusing on the business continuity management features of our resilience platform, but it is a platform which is fully integrated, which means that a few of our customers, they use it for pure enterprise risk management through the risk manager. Others use it to manage complex and comprehensive testing and exercising programs through the exercise manager. But the main piece of today's presentation is, of course, at the heart of what many of us practitioners deal with every day. The ability to plan and run comprehensive business continuity programs throughout the organizations, tie that into disaster recovery, and of course, when something happens, be able to manage an incident in a structured fashion. Scalable platform, which supports growth. So you can start with one application and grow into the others. But rather than me talking about this, we will be looking at the actual features in a second. If you want to learn more about the Continuity Manager in focus today, please visit our website. On the QR code here. You can access more detailed information, case studies, and so on. And I'll leave this up at the end as well, so you can do it later. Our approach to business continuity management. This is important because many solutions out there differ. And as I mentioned, we are operating on a number of markets and catering to customers who have different requirements. So navigating regulatory complexities is obviously one aspect to using business continuity management software in the first place. Our product provides a solid foundation to meet the ISO 22301 standard for business continuity. supporting a structured program from setting the basic foundations of business continuity, which I'll get back to in a second, through mapping out the business impact assessment, doing the dependency mapping, risk assessments, and ultimately developing plans for business continuity and recovery. It's also flexible to cater to specific operational resilience requirements as well as DORA requirements, as we're seeing, particularly in the UK, but also increasingly globally, the shift towards a more operationally focused business continuity or operational resilience. We believe firmly in a structured foundation for all of this work. We had a webinar just last week where we talked about the essential building blocks of the business impact assessment and why it's so important to have common impact criteria grounded in the organization with leadership buy-in, as well as a risk acceptance level. These are all features in the system that you will be seeing in a minute that are accessible to all the users so that we can structure the business impact assessment and comparing apples to apples. And this supports breaking silos and supporting multiple approaches to business impact assessment. Whether your organization is looking at this from a functional perspective, breaking down the BIA into critical products or services that the organization is delivering to an end customer in many cases, or whether you're approaching the BIA from a departmental or organizational approach, our software supports both approaches, as well as being able to run scenario-based BIAs and, importantly, tests and exercises. We believe firmly in breaking down the silos between different organizational units, because in many organizations, in most organizations, I would say, you have interdepartmental dependencies that are very important to capture. And this is supported through smart integrations and AI capabilities that supports us or the end users in reducing the amount of manual labor required to run a BIA, to update plans. Make sure you keep one master source of records in the CMDB, for instance. So the ability to integrate with data source systems, the CMDB, HR systems, etc., is of course a major aspect to any business continuity management software, as well as ours. And increasingly so, leveraging AI capabilities to quickly access data points in your system when there's an incident. You don't want to be looking for that phone number or who is responsible, or responsible service owner. You want to be able to look it up quickly and get valuable support from an AI that is so excellent at summarizing large data points, but also minimizing the manual labor in terms of creating and updating business continuity plans. So all of this is aspects that are well integrated into our application. Apart from that, of course, information security and flexible deployment methods is paramount. And I skipped that, as we've been supporting organizations for the past 25 years, including in the defense segment, this is, of course, something that's in our DNA in terms of having a robust solution that you can always depend on being available, that treats your data with utmost confidentiality. But that's a brief introduction to 4C strategies and our approach to business continuity. The main piece of this show is, of course, to have a look at the actual software. So with that, I will hand over to Alfredo. And before you steal back the screen share, I'll just show a last PowerPoint slide, which takes us into the realm of our fictitious company here, Horizon Corporation, which is a global insurance company. Hopefully familiar setting for many of you listening in today. But with that said, Alfredo, over to you.
All right, thank you so much, Mike, and thank you everyone for showing up today on the webinar. We are going to go through a lot of information. I'm not going to sugarcoat it for you. So with that, I hopefully will be able to hold your attention as we walk through the solution, present the information in a way that is clear and concise. But as Mike mentioned before, if you have any questions along the way, please feel free to throw them into the Q&A section and we can get to them live throughout the product demonstration. All right. So also, yes, we are going to be using Horizon Corporation as the sort of lens that we'll be viewing the solution through today. So we're going to be taking a look at just a few of the roles that you're seeing here, mainly the business continuity manager, the continuity coordinator, and we might get into a little bit of incident management as well at the end, but we will save that for then. So if you are ready to go on this journey with me, then let's get started. What we're going to do now is I am going to figure out which one of my screens I'm going to share actually first and foremost. It is actually a widescreen display, and I always give that caveat because if you have any issue seeing anything on the screen, throw it into the chat, let me know. I can zoom in, make things larger, and just present it in a way that's easier to see for you today. On the left side of my screen, you will see a card here on Janelle Phillips. This is simply to allow us to understand whose role we are viewing the product through in this current time. And right now, it's going to be that of Janelle Phillips, the business continuity manager. So essentially, her role for the system and the platform is to log in and get that bird's eye view into the organization and how the solution breaks it down for her.
Sorry, Alfredo. I can't see your screen, so I just wanted to pause you there to make sure that that's just on me and not a general issue.
Okay, well then let me try to share this one more time. All right. And let's try it one more time. Anything there? It's showing that sharing on my end.
There we go. And yes, I can confirm from the chat that that was not just me, but I'm also seeing from the chat that we resolved it. So thank you, everyone, for that.
Perfect.
And back to you, Alfredo.
See, that was all a big ruse. That I just wanted to make sure that the Q&A was working, that the chat was working, and that's how you test it early in the morning. So, but now you can see what I was mentioning before, the widescreen display. Let me know if you want me to zoom in at all. And the persona card on the left with Janelle Phillips. As I mentioned, she wants to have an understanding of what is going on organizationally, and she elicits that bird eye view into the platform. For that effort, we are going to just do an overview on how all of the applications or the products within the Resilience platform operate, starting with the left-hand side here. So here you will have all of your options around how to navigate the product, all the different areas, tool sets that you have available to you. And of course, we will be sticking primarily to this continuity management section. On the in the top right hand corner, you will notice a few things, starting with the fact that we have the notification section here. So there are built-in notifications as well as messaging in the platform. So all of any sensitive information, content that you would like to have discussed along the way can stay in the platform, stay in the solution. It does not need to leave for any reason whatsoever, as well as an active notification section. So if anything is assigned or addressed to you, you will be notified through the solution as well. The last thing that I want to... Sorry, was there a question, Mike?
Yeah, I think we're having we have a question here on if it's possible to zoom in, please.
Absolutely. let's do that. I'll overall just make it a little bit larger so we can see that just a bit here. And if you'd like me to zoom into any aspect, I'll do it like this. So as I'm speaking on these things, the top right hand corner here, of course, I want to point out the fact that I am logged in as myself, Alfredo Brown. But underneath that, what you will also notice is that I have a role assigned to me. So this solution is role-based in its access and permission controls. So I do have that assigned to me for any access of the platform. That will include...
Sorry, we're still experiencing screen sharing issues here.
Oh no.
Yeah. So maybe restart screen sharing. Sorry for that, everyone.
Yeah, for my end, it says you are screen sharing and it's showing the proper screen for me. I'll give it another go here once more and see. It looks like my camera is frozen as well. Wow. All right, maybe it's a bandwidth issue. I'm going to stop my video and we're going to go with attempt 3 in screen sharing and hope that it works flawlessly with no issues this time. Crossing fingers. It's showing that it's sharing on my end. I want to make sure that you're all able to see it.
It is sharing, and if you can move the cursor. Yeah, now we're good. So,
all right. If that happens again, Mike, ping me, let me know, and we'll see if we can get that addressed.
Okay.
All right. So I just finished speaking on the role-based access and permission control. Essentially, if you have access to the system, you will have it based on a role that's assigned to you, which will dictate what you actively see and have permissions to within the application. So you don't have to worry about user management. That gets assigned to the individual, and as they log in with the proper credentials and permission set assigned to them. Now, with that out of the way, let's talk about our business continuity solution in greater detail. What you're looking at right now, the screen that we're on, as Janelle logs in, she's greeted by our visual impact analysis. What this does is, as you can see here, it is going to break down the organization into 3 sections: products and services, the different processes that support them, and then of course the resources that make up those different processes. Now, all in each of these areas have their own section here that they are assigned to. So there's the products and service here, the processes, and the resources. This will allow you to get very granular in how you understand, approach, and break down each of these critical areas. From the dashboard perspective, if I go into the products and services, we are now greeted with a bevy of information, including what are those critical processes or services that are on offer by the organization. If there are multiple business types or types of services or products that you offer, you can of course include that here as well. We see that we also have information around the maximum tolerable period of disruption for these elements, as well as their criticality. So all of this data is just given right there to you. You have quick access to it, and that is on each level. So of course, as we get into the different processes, you will have the same information. Instead of the maximum tolerable period of disruption, we now have the recovery time objectives for those elements along with their criticality. And then of course the different resources. This is where things get a little bit colorful as we have a ton of different resource types. So now we want to make sure that you are thinking of and operating from a continuity perspective across the organization. A lot of times when we have conversations with prospects and now customers and clients, the way that it typically gets handled is from more of an IT perspective, where there's a lot of asset tracking, a lot of information around those critical IT needs, but not necessarily from a total organizational standpoint. From here, we can track different elements such as different locations, software, department. If there are third-party suppliers that you're working with, you can also track those areas here as well. So now what we're able to do is really take an approach of let's get the entire organizational assets and our critical assets on the board and keep track of them from a continuity perspective. All of this information now will flow directly up to, if we go back to the impact analysis, their home on this visual BIA. Once again, getting real colorful, and that is by design. We want to make sure that you have instant and clear access to understanding what these elements are and where they are within your continuity journey and needs. You'll understand based on the color of each item here, the criticality of that element. So fun switch, that's a negligible criticality. But if we look at motor claim here, this actually carries with it the highest critical level that we have on offer. So just from being able to have access to the impact analysis here, we can see all of that information, and it really can be up to you how you sort this. You can sort it by individual products and services, processes, or resources. You can go in and access just the one that you're looking for, or have a view into the overall organization like Janelle has done here. So from her perspective, she just wants to really key in on those items that require her attention. Not only can she look at the color and determine the criticality of said resource, but she can see different bits of information, such as the number here is actually the MTPD for that critical service. If we look at the processes here, we'll see that it's giving us access to information such as the actual recovery time objective, as well as any of the connected MTPD. So we're seeing here that it's alerting us in red that there are two dependencies that are exceeding the maximum tolerable period of disruption. So this is where you have that quick at a glance view into, okay, are there processes that we need to revamp? Are we not ahead of our RTOs and our MTPDs based off of the different connections? And the way that it knows that is because at any moment I can click on one of these elements and simply say show all. And now what it's going to do is, based on if it's a product or service, process or resource, is it will map out the upstream and downstream dependencies connected to that element. If this is a bit busy here, I can say I only want to show connected, and now based on my selection, it is really just going to key in on just that motor claim process, so we can understand all of the different processes that are involved and the different resources, which will of course be broken out into their different categories. On the left here, you have people resources, technology in the middle, our different facilities, and I think we also have third-party supplier information down here below. So as a critical way of understanding where we would stack up if one of these elements goes offline or becomes unavailable, this is critical for our organizations to really key in on that and understand what are the full upstream and downstream effects of that being the case. But that's just scratching the surface once again. Mike, I see you've raised your hand. Was there a question?
Yeah, I think it's a good time to prep people. If you have any questions about this, please ask them in the chat. And just tying into the introduction there, what you're seeing here is a visualization of our Horizon Corporation on the corporate level, so the overall level, and then by function. So at the top level here, if you scroll up, Alfredo, you'll see what I mentioned there doing a functional BIA, is that we've broken down this into the products and services that Horizon Corporation is delivering, with all the dependencies downstream on the processes and the resources, including the different resource pillars: technology, facility, third-party suppliers, etc. So instant overview of that. An important aspect to this is, as you see in the breadcrumbs at the top, the ability to also structure this by departmental units. So as we mentioned, we're at the corporate level, but underneath this, you have an IT department, You may have a finance function, so they have dedicated workspaces where a BIA can be performed department by department as well. And when you aggregate that to the corporate level, you'll be able to see cross-departmental dependencies as well, giving you a very powerful instant view into what is it that this organization is delivering and what are the key critical dependencies. And as you mentioned there, Alfredo, as well, where are we seeing the gaps between the RTO of individual resources or processes and then the MTPD that the organization has set, in this case, 18 hours for motor claim as a function.
Absolutely, and thank you for that.
We're good for questions so far. I'll be doing this. I'll be interrupting you and giving people some opportunity to ask questions, but we can move on. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. All right. So, with access to this, as I mentioned, we're just sort of scratching the surface because we don't want to just provide you this base level of information and context here. From this perspective, let's say that I want to have and access more information on this Microsoft 365 Exchange service simply by selecting this tile. Now you'll see that it will actually, it'll actually do whatever that just did. Excuse me, let me refresh here for a second. By accessing that tile, there we go. I think I'm having some Chrome issues here. I apologize for that. What it will do is it's actually going to show me information about that resource in the right-hand column here. Now, this is the same information that we can associate, or types of information we can associate with any critical resource, product, process, or service that you offer. And we're basically taking all of the data and the important information and pulling it into one centralized location so you can review it here. So for this, I have the recommended RTO, recommendations based on the actual system itself, the RTO that has been decided by the organization, as well as the recommended criticality level and the accepted criticality. All this is showing you is that there is intelligence built into the platform that will recommend the RTO and criticality for these elements, but it also enables you to, based off of any redundancies that you may have in place, to override said criticality and provide any reasoning and rationale for that. But we're also able to gather any other important details. You'll see there's some general tech resource information here. Maybe you want to tie in, your tech resource availability, uptime levels. If you want to link out to an external source, maybe put in a link directly to Microsoft's disaster recovery plan when it comes to Microsoft 365, you can include all those details here. So it's really allowing you, from an organizational standpoint, have access to all the key information in one centralized area to review. You can review also, as we go down the list here, the dependencies, both upstream and downstream on the process and the resource level. You can also review any information around the risk assessments that have been performed. If there is a possibility for this to occur, are there continuity plans that are needed, and what continuity plans are those? And of course, that information can also be thrown in here as well. So now we have access not only to the full visual business impact analysis, but details on each asset and resource. We have critical information around the upstream and downstream dependencies, the risk assessments that have been performed, and the continuity plans and the steps breakdown, as well as the estimated time for that process to be completed, all within one view. So this is, once again, been very impactful for all of the clientele that we are supporting with this solution, to really have that key and critical information served directly to them and not have to hop from screen to screen or application to application to pull all of that dedicated information together. So this is another great area where I'd like to take a pause, see if there's anything that, any questions that have come through before we sort of go to the next level. But this would be sort of the culmination of Janelle Phillips and her role of just having access to all that key and critical information as she begins to move forward in her day.
Perfect. Thank you, Alfredo. Yes, there's a question on if you can filter by impact category. And I think, well, that's an excellent question. If you could spend a little more time on the filter function there and show that, yes, there are multiple ways of filtering. In this case, we have a default, but you see criticality down there, for instance, as well as types. And then I would recommend that you go in and show how is the impact category actually set, or impact criteria actually set for a distinctive product or service.
Absolutely. That is a wonderful question. Thank you for providing that. And we'll get into that right now. So as
Yeah.
you can see here on the right-hand side, we have accessible products and services, processes, and resources. Those three key areas that we are discovering. So we can search by any of the information associated with with these data sets. So of course, if you want to look up a particular product or service, we can do so here. I'll go back to the motor claim one that was used in our example. You can pull this up simply by applying the filter, and now we just have that particular resource. Or if we want to find all of the products and services that have a minor criticality or particular criticality rating or RTO, we can include all that information and really allow you to sort and filter this out by whatever means you would like. And once again, that's for the critical services, process, and resource level. So I can also go bottom up and say, I want to look for all of my different facilities that we have. Can just pull that information up. Now we have all of our facilities, or maybe I want to see ones with a particular RTO level. As you can see here, you can do equal than, not equal to, less than, greater than, and then give a value as well. But this will also help you in understanding and selecting information. I see that we have a hand raised. Was there a question that was put in the chat?
Yeah. Yes. Sorry about that. I'm looking at the chat. What I will add to this, very good, Alfredo, is that these are configurable filter values. So now we've set it up to be able to filter on these four main categories here: resources, types, category, and RTO. But it's also entirely possible from a front-end perspective and admin rights to add additional filtering capabilities. That also ties into a question we got here in the chat on whether we can change the criticality labels in the tool. Yes, these are just examples that we're using for this particular setup that is 100% configurable to users.
And
we'll get, yep, sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead.
No, and I was just going to acknowledge that we have a question on if we can show an example of a plan that's created for a department or business service. We'll get to that in a second.
Absolutely, and thank you on that. And yes, there is, and that's an important thing to point out here, a high level of configurability. And I say configure because we, of course, on our end, want to make sure that you are empowered to utilize the solution to its fullest and to the way that makes sense for your organization specifically. So if there's anything that you'd like to add, any different information, different attributes that you'd like to filter off of, that is completely within your willpower to change that. And if your criticality ratings are called something different, then of course that is something that you can configure within the application, or we would have configured for you during the implementation process as well. So that's also very important and key. All right. If there are no other questions, let's do this. I'm actually going to go into the motor claim process because I think that this is a good one to show off, especially to ensure that we understand exactly what we're looking at when it comes to this solution and how all of this information is coming together. We went into how we're able to click show all and we can see all dependencies. If I want to just see the nearest items that are connected to it, I can do that here as well. But by opening up this particular element, we're now going to, once again, without leaving the visual business impact analysis, pull up the actual data and information around this resource. So let me make this a little bit larger. There we go. Apologies if you're seeing some flashing. As I said, that's on my end, my Chrome browser here. But as you can see, as I open up this resource, you will notice that this follows a very simplified structure when it comes to identifying and understanding this critical resource or critical service that's on offer. And there's a simple process for getting from the identification phase all the way through the continuity planning of this particular element. It starts with the identification here. You'll notice that there is a checklist that will let you know, hey, have you completed everything that's necessary in order to have this completed, mapped out with the continuity plans added. We're going to start with the description, adding a description, a service owner, and any other general information and details you'd like around the identification of these services. We can further define it based off of peak periods of volume if you have it, or expected user outcomes. But where we're really going to start to get into the meat and potatoes here of the solution will be with this. Let me collapse this to give us more room. We'll be with this impact criteria matrix. So essentially what we're doing here is we're allowing you to give just basic information around how does the organization as a whole want to classify what are the impact areas that we are making sure to track that will determine the ultimate criticality of this particular critical service or product. From here, we see that Horizon has chosen to understand from the consumer level, market integrity, firm safety and soundness, policy protection, and financial stability. They added just simple guidelines on how to classify this. This is key and important because what we hear constantly from prospects and clients is simply that, well, based on the different areas that we have within our organization, we will notice that having them determine a criticality, let's say, finance or accounting, maybe IT, from their perspective, each one of those particular elements may have a higher criticality level than we would consider organizationally, because of course that is their area of expertise. It's going to be very important to them. We want to make sure that we have it tracked as a general rule and on an equal playing field across the board. So the organization determines what those impact criteria are. As this gets filled out and submitted, you will see that now the solution is going to recommend a criticality. So here we have the recommended criticality determined by the system. We have chosen to accept, or Janelle at Horizon has chosen to accept this criticality and provided a rationale and key reasons why this is the particular criticality for this particular element. Of course, once again, everyone who has access to this can log into the system and review it, and this allows us to maintain cohesion and to stay on the same page across the board. So as we are determining the criticality from the impact criteria matrix, we're now going to use the impact tolerance to take that information, take those same impact categories, and now we are attaching a time threshold to them. So we're saying that based off of the consumer impact category, our threshold is when 10% of the customers have been affected, and we've determined that that takes about 12 hours for that to occur. So this will ultimately, based on the assessment here, recommend the maximum tolerable period of disruption. But as I mentioned before, Janelle here has kindly said, you know what, we know we have some redundancies in place that will grant us a few more hours. So we are actually setting our maximum tolerable period of disruption at 18. And once again, she can provide the rationale for this. So once again, we want to ensure that we're able to identify, define based off of a set criteria matrix that, once again, highly configurable, and you yourself will determine. You now have the information necessary to begin the rest of the process that will ultimately produce that visual BIA. But before we get into that, I want to take another pause because I think this is a very important area to sort of see if there are any questions and generate some conversation around. Let's think about this from a perspective of, not necessarily solution to solution, but process to process. What are you currently going through right now to get this level of information and access and detail across the organization? Mike, I didn't know if there were any questions that came through. I'm relying solely on you for that. I appreciate your support here today.
I'll say, well, I'll give everyone a chance to consider that and ask their questions. You touched upon it, and to preempt the question, yes, those category in the impact criteria matrix there, they are completely configurable. And as you can see, they are also there designed to cater to different regulatory frameworks. Obviously, different organizations, the impact criteria is going to differ by segment, by organization, but there may also be compliance requirements, such as under UK operational resilience requirements, to be able to capture potential effects on market integrity, harm to consumers, and so on. So completely configurable. But that is an important aspect, that this is available to all the users of the system, so that it governs the conversation or the way people look at impact, and you compare apples to apples rather than every department inventing their own impact criteria and ultimately setting MTPDs that can't be compared. If we and the reason it's recommending MTPD here is because we're on the top level, we're at the functional service level. Whereas if we were going down to resources, which I'll give you a chance to do in a minute, in the dependency mapping, you'd see
Sure.
the RTO. But we do have a lingering question, so
Great.
that I will let you cover in a minute, and that is how would the continuity plans look? But let's have a look at the dependency mapping and risk assessments before we get to that finale.
Perfect. I know that we have only a few more minutes together here. I appreciate your patience. We'll be getting to the nuts and bolts of that, and we'll continue on the journey. As Mike mentioned, this is the top level, the critical products and services where everything flows through, and that's why it's suggesting the MTPD and not necessarily an RTO. As we have determined that, we can now get into the process of mapping out, doing the dependency mapping. This is, of course, how we are visualizing and pulling the different bits of information together to attach the processes to this critical service, as well as the supporting resources along the way. So now we have a detailed breakdown of how each one of these elements work in tandem to support that critical resource. And we're also bringing in a lot of those details and information including the details and criticality around that particular process, and then the resources that are supporting it and that are connected to it as well. This is a very important distinguishing factor here, because what we're going to also capture here is the dependency criticality and the dependency RTO. Notice I did not say the criticality and the RTO. We have that information when it comes to the overall visual business impact analysis. However, this is how this particular resource, this is the RTO and the criticality based on this particular process. So if we think about it from an organizational standpoint, your entire organization may be using Microsoft 365 Exchange, or most likely will be. but based on the department, their reliance on it will be completely different, therefore having a different criticality and recovery time objective on based on that particular need. So we want to make sure that you capture that for each individual department, and that is specific to it, and you're having that real-time access into, okay, well, what would this mean for IT versus what would this mean for accounting versus the facilities group? How are we actually managing this and keeping these resources in line with the expectations based on the use case? So this allows you to capture that individual use case information and have it applicable throughout. So we're capturing individual details and on that micro and macro level. The next area here would be the risk assessment. So based on the product and service, you'll see that you're able to conduct a risk assessment where you can determine, once again, as I mentioned before, the likelihood if there is a full detailed risk assessment that's necessary. You will also get alerts to understand which ones qualify for that, and you're able to do that from the process and resource level as well. So this will of course allow you to capture any particular details that you like around these areas, any or multiple right, well, let's see if a good old refresh will bring this back. Apologies again. But yes, you're able to see if there are any different risk assessment types that you'd like to perform for those particular resources and assets. And hopefully we are
I can
back up and running.
can answer a couple of questions while I think Zoom here is interfering with the bandwidth. Sorry everyone for that, but to answer a couple of questions. So that point you made on the criticality dependency and versus the or dependency criticality and dependency RTO versus an RTO. There's a question in the chat if we assume the process owner already knows the RTO. Or if we will get it through the BIA. The answer is both. We can have the RTO for, let's say, a particular application that might be derived from an SLA through a vendor in the inventory of assets. But then we can also, as you mentioned there importantly, Alfredo, look at how this criticality plays out or the RTO plays out in relation to this particular business function. That way, we will also across the organization where you have multiple functions or departments dependent on the same resources, be able to see differences because it's going to look different in different dependency settings. It may also be influenced, of course, as you showed there in the risk assessment, by the redundancies you have. If you have a department which has a lot of contingency plans, well, then that can impact the way we view criticality and ultimately RTO. So you can see it both from a static, this is what's given to us by the inventory, and this is what we're seeing in this particular dependency, and choose which value to apply. The system will recommend the lowest value to you. Now, mindful of time, I would suggest we move on to the continuity plans.
Absolutely. Let's go ahead and jump into that. I'll appreciate the patience with my technology here today. As I am getting out of the products, process, and resource section, I want to highlight that there is an overarching risk assessment, testing and exercising, as well as continuity plan section. So this will be for any overarching BCPs that have been created for the organization, and it works in the exact same fashion as it does for the individual products and services, processes and resources. So here we have the overarching BCP for our EOC. As you can see, there are objectives that we can add, key functions, as well as other RTO and RPO information, plan owners' roles and responsibilities that are assigned out, as well as any particular testing maintenance levels. All of this information, once again, can be configured for the detailed and specific nature that you would want and need. And then underneath that, you will see the tasks for said continuity plan. Now, this is once again really key and important, because from our perspective, a plan is simply that. It's a plan. It's a series of tasks that need to be conducted to achieve our desired outcome. So we can, in our platform, of course, take those tasks and break them out into individual actions. So when we need to, of course, invoke this BCP, we already have the tasks built out and associated with different users in the system. So now those tasks can clearly be created and assigned. So as we invoke this BCP, the actions and tasks get assigned out across the board to the different individuals who will need to participate and take part in that. And then you will, of course, be able to track all of the actions along with that from a centralized dashboard from your continuity manager. So you have the full insight into what's going on organizationally around this information for you to determine. Now, what we're also able to do is, as you can see here, you can print out any one of these particular continuity plans. So you can keep, paper records if you want, or if you just like to have, copies for as I mentioned, paper records that you might have copies of, or if you'd like to just have a manual way to hand off these operational plans to an individual, you of course have that. So we don't want to just keep you and hold you into the digital realm. We allow you to have access to all of the tools necessary to perform this particular continuity plan. Now, being mindful of time, want to make sure once again that there aren't any additional questions that we can get to, anything else that you would like to see before we sort of wrap up here today. I want to make sure that we have time necessary to answer any questions.
Yeah, I think this merits a little more conversation, the business continuity plans. What you're looking at here is a departmental business continuity plans for the emergency operations function. But importantly, what the system also does, it captures plans and disaster recovery plans for individual resources. So, and all that data, once we set the scope, if you open the Emergency Operations Center Business Continuity Plan up, when we set the scope for this plan, we can also include those underlying aspects. So this plan, as we see here, it is dependent on the overarching function, the Emergency Operations Center, but it's also covering down to the level of individual resources, Mayfair, even down to a specific floor of our Mayfair office. And if you click Mayfair floor 2 there, you will see on the right-hand side on the plans tab, that we have, continuity plans there, that we have recovery plan specified for specifically Mayfair floor 2. So now all this gets pulled together, collated, and you can design this simply by setting the scope of the plan, and it pulls all the underlying data. And as you mentioned, Alfredo, this can then of course be printed out, stored for posterity, for audit trails, etc. So, yep. I think we're looking at the time here. It's 9:54. So we'll pause here and see if there are any additional questions coming in. One that's come in here is, and that relates to the impact criteria. Do we define financial number ranges for the financial impact? Yes. The impact criteria matrix that you saw Alfredo walk through, that can be defined and should be defined also by numbers in terms of what would be the financial impact if we're experiencing a disruption in the service in the major to catastrophic end, if we take that as examples. And through that, you can then quickly define what the organization's risk acceptance would be, which will once again, of course, differ by organization. So it's all completely configurable.
Yeah, great questions.
Yeah. And then, yes, also a very good question here coming in. Is the tool able to link local BIA records to enterprise processes? Yes. As you saw there in the visual BIA, the breadcrumb at the top defines which workspace we're in. So when we do the business impact assessments, we could do it for, let's say the IT department is a local business impact assessment. And if you have the access privileges and the permissions to access the corporate level, you can then aggregate all of this up to the corporate level or whichever way you slice the cake. That means you will be able to see dependencies that are not native just to the IT department or the finance and accounting department, but how these play together from a corporate perspective. And I have another great question. What is the RTO impact tiers you define? Critical 0 to 4. We recommend that you set these tiers, and yes, 0 to 4 hours, 4 to 24 hours for tier 2, for instance. What you saw in this particular setup was the RTOs being defined by hours and minutes and not tiered in that aspect, but that can of course be done as well. And is there a native emergency notification system? Yes, there is a functionality to send mass notification. Everything we do here in terms of tasks, in terms of plan approvals and review processes, that has a built-in notification system. But on top of that, you can also add in mass notification to send out both templated and bespoke messages to individuals or stakeholders inside and outside of the organization through SMS, texts, through emails, and so on. Thereby being able to quickly notify the organization of an IT outage, for instance. Perfect. And a great question to cap this off. What makes, I'll put the final PowerPoint slide up here. Sorry, why I navigate the share function. And put the PowerPoint slideshow back up so you can find out more information by visiting our homepage. What makes us different to others? Well, as I mentioned in the introduction, we've been at this for 25 years now. It's an organization that's solely focused on resilience in terms of our expert services, in terms of our software. It is our own proprietary software, so we're not building this off another piece of technology and trying to tweak that into a business continuity management solution, which gives you flexibility. A lot of what we've been talking about here provides you with the ability to configure, let it be, say it be tiers, be the way we use impact or resource pillars. This is all configurable and defined by the organization. And we work together with you in order to get that configuration right through our expert services or the experts, the subject matter experts in the organization that's spread out across the world and is very knowledgeable about the different frameworks that different organizations and different segments face. So with that, I will see if there are any final question here. Questions. I think we've covered them all. We thank you very much for coming up on the full hour. So we thank you very much for listening in to this session. If there are any straggling questions that we didn't answer, we'll make sure to follow up afterwards. And a final point to thank you, Alfredo, for a great presentation as well. You can find more information at 4C Strategies website, and we'll be happy to continue the conversation. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, everyone.
Mm.